I never believed in Bigfoot until the summer of 1980, when I met one that spoke to me in perfect English on a hiking trail in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon. And what happened when that creature realized I was recording our conversation changed my entire life, forcing me to make a choice between proof and survival. Let me tell you this story from the beginning, because even now, at 72 years old, I still wake up some nights hearing that voice in the darkness. My name is Vincent Holloway, and in 1980 I was 27 years old, working as a freelance nature photographer based out of Portland, Oregon. It was a good time to be young and independent. The economy was recovering. Mount St. Helens had just erupted that May, and the whole Pacific Northwest was buzzing with geological excitement. I was making decent money selling photographs to outdoor magazines like Field and Stream and National Geographic. I'd grown up in Salem, Oregon, the son of a lumber mill worker named Frank and an elementary school teacher named Margaret. My childhood was spent exploring the forests around the Willamette Valley, learning to identify trees and birds from my father, who knew these woods intimately from decades of work, developing a deep love for wilderness that eventually turned into a career despite my parents' initial concerns. After high school graduation in 1971, I'd attended Oregon State University for 2 years studying forestry before dropping out to pursue photography full-time, a decision that caused significant tension at home. My parents weren't thrilled with what they saw as abandoning a stable career path, but by 1980, I was proving them wrong with a solid portfolio, regular clients, and enough income to afford a small apartment in the trendy Northwest Portland neighborhood and a reliable vehicle that became my mobile office, a 1978 Ford Bronco, brown with a distinctive white top, equipped with four-wheel drive and enough cargo space for all my camera equipment and camping gear. The summer of 1980 was particularly hot and memorable for many reasons beyond just the weather. I remember the radio constantly playing the hits of that year. Blondie's Call Me and Queen's Crazy Little Thing Called Love seemed to be on every station. The Summer Olympics were happening in Moscow, though the United States had boycotted them over the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, creating international tension that dominated the news. Ronald Reagan was actively campaigning for president, promising to restore American confidence and strength. Meanwhile, I was spending as much time as possible in the mountains trying to capture images of wildlife and landscapes before the autumn rains began turning the trails to mud and limiting access to the higher elevations. On July 18, 1980, a Friday morning that dawned clear and warm with the promise of another scorching day, I drove east from Portland into the Cascade Range, heading for a remote area near Mount Hood, where I'd heard reports of a family of black bears frequenting a particular valley during the salmon spawning season. My assignment was for Outdoor Life magazine, one of my regular clients who appreciated my work. They wanted a comprehensive photo essay on bear behavior during salmon spawning season, focusing on the intersection of predator and prey, the natural cycles that kept these ecosystems functioning. I left Portland at 4 in the morning, my Bronco loaded with camera equipment, 2 Nikon F2 bodies, multiple lenses ranging from 50mm to 400mm, dozens of rolls of Kodachrome film, a tripod, and my most recent acquisition, a Sony TCM 600 cassette recorder I'd bought just 2 weeks earlier for $60 at an electronics store downtown. The recorder was compact, about the size of a paperback book, with a built-in microphone and the ability to record up to 90 minutes on a single cassette tape. I'd bought it because I wanted to start documenting ambient forest sounds to accompany my photographs, bird songs, wind through trees, streams flowing. Some magazines were interested in multimedia presentations, and I figured having audio recordings would give me an edge over other photographers. I had no idea how important that recorder would become. The drive to the trailhead took nearly 3 hours, winding through small towns like Sandy and Government Camp, climbing steadily into the mountains. By 7 a.m., I was parked at a remote Forest Service access road, the Bronco hidden behind a stand of Douglas firs, my gear packed into my hiking backpack. The trail I planned to follow wasn't on any official map. I'd learned about it from an old-timer named Walt, who I'd met at a bar in Government Camp a month earlier. Walt had been a logger in these mountains for 40 years, and he'd told me about a valley where bears congregated every summer because of a particular creek that had exceptional salmon runs. "Nobody goes there anymore," Walt had said, nursing a Budweiser. "Logging company abandoned it in the 60s after they clear-cut the accessible areas. But the deeper valley still has old-growth trees and that creek. Bears love it. You want pictures? That's where you go." He'd drawn me a rough map on a cocktail napkin showing landmarks, a distinctive rock formation, a fallen cedar tree that bridged the creek, a meadow with an old rusted logging cable. I'd kept that napkin, and now I followed its directions, hiking northeast through thick forest, climbing steadily. The morning was already warm, promising another scorching day. I wore jeans, a plaid flannel shirt over a t-shirt, hiking boots, and a baseball cap with the Oregon State Beavers logo. My backpack was heavy, probably 50 pounds with all the camera equipment, but I was young and in good shape from regular hiking. The forest was beautiful that morning. Shafts of sunlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating patches of ferns and wildflowers. I could hear Stella's jays calling, the distant drumming of a pileated woodpecker, the constant white noise of wind moving through pine branches around 9 a.m. I reached the creek Walter described. It was perfect, about 20 feet wide, crystal clear, flowing over rounded stones with several deep pools where I could see salmon resting. The banks were lined with berry bushes, and I could see fresh bear tracks in the mud near the water's edge. I set up my equipment on a small rise that gave me a good vantage point of the creek and surrounding area. I mounted my Nikon with the 400mm lens on the tripod, loaded it with fresh film, and settled in to wait. Bear photography requires patience. Sometimes you wait hours or even days for the right shot. I also set up my Sony recorder, placing it on a flat rock near where I was sitting, and pressed record. The cassette tape began to turn, capturing the ambient sounds of the creek and forest. For the next several hours, I waited and watched. I ate the lunch I'd packed, a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, a Snickers bar, and water from my canteen. I took photographs of the creek, the salmon, a red-tailed hawk that perched briefly in a nearby tree. The temperature climbed into the 80s, and I shed my flannel shirt, working in just my t-shirt, around 2 p.m. I finally saw what I'd come for. A large black bear emerged from the forest on the opposite bank of the creek. It was a beautiful animal, probably 400 pounds with glossy black fur. I began photographing immediately, my camera's motor drive whirring as I captured the bear wading into the water, watching for salmon. I was so focused on the bear through my viewfinder that I didn't notice the other presence until I heard a voice behind me say in perfect, unaccented English, "That's a nice camera you have there." I froze. The voice was deep, resonant, unmistakably masculine, but with a quality I couldn't quite place, like hearing someone speak from the bottom of a well. I turned slowly, my heart suddenly hammering in my chest, and found myself looking up at something that shouldn't exist. It stood about 15 feet behind me, partially concealed by the shadows of a large cedar tree. Even in the shade, I could see it clearly, a massive figure, easily 7.5 feet tall, covered in dark brown hair that hung in long, shaggy strands. The shoulders were incredibly broad, the arms long and muscular, ending in hands that looked almost human, but much larger. The face was what shocked me most. It wasn't entirely ape-like, nor was it human. It was something in between. A broad, flat nose, a heavy brow ridge, high cheekbones, and a jaw that seemed almost too large for the skull. But the eyes... God, the eyes were completely human. Brown, intelligent, filled with unmistakable awareness and curiosity. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 or 15 seconds. Then it spoke again. "Don't be afraid, Vincent. I'm not going to hurt you." The fact that it knew my name somehow made everything more terrifying and more surreal. "How do you know my name?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been watching you since you entered the valley this morning," it said, moving slightly so that more light fell across its features. "You move quietly for a human. You're respectful of the forest, and your name is on your camera strap." I glanced down and saw the leather strap with my name embossed on it, a gift from my ex-girlfriend. "Right," I said, feeling absurd. "Of course. You speak English. Very well, I might add." "I learned it over many years of listening to humans," the creature said. "Your kind talks a lot when you think you're alone. Loggers, hikers, hunters, all of you speak your thoughts out loud. It's not that difficult to pick up the language when you're patient, may I ask?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you?" "You know what I am," it replied. "Your kind has many names for us. Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the hairy man, the forest giant. But we call ourselves something that doesn't translate well into your language. For simplicity, you may call me Walker. Is that your name?" I asked. "It's what I do," Walker said. "I walk. I cover great distances through these mountains, observing, thinking, surviving. Names are important to humans, less so to my kind. But yes, you may call me Walker." I realized my recorder was still running, capturing every word of this impossible conversation. Should I tell Walker? Should I turn it off? Before I could decide, Walker took another step closer. I could smell it now, an earthy, musky scent that wasn't unpleasant, like rich forest soil after rain. "Tell me, Vincent Holloway," Walker said, "why do you come to the forest with your cameras and your equipment? What are you seeking?" "Beauty," I said honestly. "Evidence of life. Moments that others don't take the time to witness. I want to show people why these places matter." "A noble purpose," Walker said. "But it comes with risk. What you document, you expose. What you expose becomes vulnerable. I've seen this pattern repeated throughout my long life. Humans discover something rare and beautiful. They photograph it and write about it. Then they destroy it through attention and development. Is that not the truth of your species?" I couldn't argue with that. "You're not wrong," I admitted, "but not all humans are like that. Some of us want to preserve these places, protect them." Walker made a sound that might have been laughter, though it was unlike any human laugh. "Protection through documentation is still exposure, Vincent. The safest places are the ones humans don't know about. The safest creatures are the ones that remain in legend rather than fact." We talked for over an hour, and during that time, Walker told me things that challenged everything I thought I knew about the natural world, human history, and humanity's place in the larger ecosystem. Walker's people, the Sasquatch, had lived in these forests for thousands of years, far longer than Europeans had been on this continent, possibly even longer than the indigenous tribes who now told stories about them. They were intelligent in ways that paralleled human intelligence, but developed along different lines. They had their own sophisticated culture, their own complex language, filled with sounds that human vocal cords couldn't reproduce, their own traditions that had been passed down through countless generations. But they had learned over centuries, through painful and often deadly experience, that survival meant remaining absolutely hidden from humans at all costs. "There are so few of us left now," Walker said with obvious sadness that transcended species barriers, the emotion clear in that deep voice. "Perhaps 200 individuals scattered thinly across the Pacific Northwest and into British Columbia and Alaska. We're dying out slowly, but inevitably, not from hunting or disease, but from loss of habitat and increasing isolation from each other." Our population is too dispersed now for healthy breeding patterns, too fragmented by roads and development and human activity. We need large territories, unbroken forests, connected populations to survive long-term. But every year, there are fewer such places, and the distances between our family groups grow greater. Within perhaps 50 years, maybe less, we'll be gone completely, extinct. Just another legend that was once real, but became only memory. Why tell me this, I asked, genuinely confused by Walker's willingness to share such intimate and tragic information. Why reveal yourself to me at all? Why risk everything for a conversation with a human you don't know? Walker was quiet for a long moment, and I could see something working behind those remarkably expressive eyes, some internal struggle or pain that transcended the immediate moment. "Because I'm tired, Vincent," Walker finally said. "Tired of hiding every moment of every day. Tired of watching my kind fade away while humans cut down the ancient forests and build roads and shopping centers through our last remaining refuges. Tired of being invisible, of being dismissed as myth and legend and misidentification. I wanted, just once before I die, to have an actual honest conversation with one of your kind, to be seen and acknowledged as something more than a shadow or a blurry photograph or a story told around campfires, to be recognized as a thinking being with thoughts and feelings and concerns and fears and hopes, to matter to someone, even if just for an hour. You could reveal yourselves more broadly," I suggested, though even as I said it, I could sense the problems with that approach. You could seek protection, legal status, endangered species designation, something official. Humans do protect endangered species when we know about them. We create preserves, enforce protections, prosecute poachers. Walker made that sound again, the one that might have been laughter but held absolutely no humor, only bitterness accumulated over a long lifetime of observation. "Your species protects what it can control and study and manage," Vincent, Walker said, "what it can put in zoos or reserves or research facilities or laboratories. What do you think would actually happen if we revealed ourselves to the human world? Really think about it. Scientists would want to capture us for study, would want to measure and test and examine every aspect of our biology and behavior. Hunters would want to kill us for trophies or proof, or simply for the challenge of being the first to bag something legendary. The military might see us as potential threats that need to be controlled or eliminated. Our freedom, our autonomy, our right to live on our own terms would end completely and irrevocably the moment your world confirmed our existence with physical specimens. We've watched this pattern repeated for centuries with countless species. Better to remain myth and legend than become specimens and curiosities." I understood then the terrible weight of what Walker was saying. There was no good outcome for their species. Remain hidden and slowly go extinct. Reveal themselves and lose everything that made them who they were. "It's an impossible situation," I said. "There has to be another way." "Perhaps," Walker said, "but I won't live to see it. I'm old, Vincent, by my people's measure, ancient. I've lived to see my family die, my territory shrink, my kind dwindle. This conversation with you, it's a luxury I'm allowing myself at the end of a long life. A moment of honesty before I disappear back into the forest for however much time remains." Then Walker's posture changed suddenly, becoming alert and tense in a way that set my nerves on edge. Walker's head tilted slightly, those intelligent eyes narrowing, and I realized Walker was looking directly at my cassette recorder, still faithfully running on the flat rock beside me, the tape reels turning slowly in the afternoon sun. "You've been recording this entire conversation, haven't you?" Walker said, and there was something distinctly dangerous in the tone now. An edge that hadn't been there before, a reminder that despite the philosophical discussion and the appearance of peaceful interaction, I was sitting across from something that could literally tear me apart, if it chose to. My blood went cold, and my heart began hammering against my ribs. Yes, I admitted, seeing no point in lying when the evidence was literally sitting there between us. I record ambient forest sounds for my work, for multimedia presentations. It's part of my process. I didn't think to turn it off when you appeared. I was too surprised, too focused on what was happening to remember it was even running. Walker moved closer, closing the distance between us to perhaps 10 feet, and I could see the intelligence and calculation working behind those eyes, could see Walker thinking through implications and possibilities and dangers. "That recording is evidence, Vincent," Walker said, the voice hard now, stripped of the earlier warmth and philosophical contemplation, concrete, undeniable proof of my existence and my people's existence. What do you intend to do with it? What are your plans for that tape? "I don't know," I said honestly, my mouth dry with fear and confusion and the weight of sudden responsibility. I haven't thought that far ahead. Everything happened so fast. I came here to photograph bears, and instead I'm having a conversation with a creature that isn't supposed to exist. I haven't had time to process what any of this means, let alone make decisions about what to do with recordings or evidence. "Think now," Walker said, the voice still hard but with an undertone of desperation that was almost painful to hear. "Think very carefully, because this decision will have profound consequences. That tape could change everything for both of us. You could take it to scientists, could prove to the world conclusively that we exist and that we're intelligent and articulate. You'd become famous overnight, rich beyond your current dreams, validated in ways you can't even imagine. Every magazine and news outlet would want your story. Every scientist would want to study your evidence. Everyone who ever doubted that these creatures are real would have to acknowledge the truth. Your photographs would be worth fortunes. Your career would be made. You'd never have to struggle for work again. And my people would be hunted down within months," Walker continued, the desperation now clear and raw. "Every forest we inhabit would be invaded by researchers and curiosity seekers and hunters. Every remote valley would be systematically searched. Every one of us would be captured or killed or driven from the last safe places we have left in this world. That recording, those 90 minutes of conversation, is quite literally our death sentence. It's the end of everything we've fought to preserve for centuries. It's the extinction of my species, delivered not through malice, but through your ambition and desire for proof and validation." I looked at the recorder, still running faithfully, the tape reels turning slowly and steadily, capturing everything, preserving every word and sound and moment of this impossible encounter. Everything Walker said was absolutely true. This recording would be worth everything to me, professionally and personally. Proof beyond any doubt or argument, validation of the impossible. Physical evidence that would change scientific understanding and public perception forever. But it would also mean the end for Walker and every other Sasquatch trying desperately to survive in the shrinking wilderness, trying to hold on to the last remnants of a world that was disappearing around them. "You want me to erase it?" I said quietly. It wasn't really a question. "I'm asking you to make a choice," Walker replied, and some of the hardness had left the voice, replaced by something more complex, a mixture of hope and resignation, proof or survival. "Your personal gain or our continued existence as a free species. I won't force you. I could destroy the recorder physically, could threaten you with violence, could take it by force, but I choose not to because that would make me exactly what humans fear we are, monsters who solve problems with violence. Instead, I'm asking you, as one thinking being to another, as one person to another, despite our different forms. What kind of person are you, Vincent Holloway? What matters more to you, personal success or the survival of a species you just met? What does your conscience tell you to do? What can you live with?" I picked up the recorder, my hands shaking. I stopped the recording. ejected the cassette tape. I held it for a long moment, feeling the weight of it, the weight of everything it represented. Then I pulled the tape out, exposing the brown magnetic ribbon to the sunlight. I wrapped the loose tape around my hand and pulled, unspooling it completely, destroying it beyond recovery. "There," I said, "it's gone. No proof, no evidence, just my word, which no one would believe anyway." Walker was silent for a long moment. Then, why? Why destroy something so valuable? "Because you're right," I said. "Some things are more important than proof. You trusted me by revealing yourself, by having this conversation. The least I can do is trust you in return, and because I don't want to be responsible for the extinction of an entire species just so I can be famous." Walker stepped forward and placed one massive hand on my shoulder. The touch was surprisingly gentle, warm through my t-shirt. "You've given my people a gift today, Vincent Holloway. The gift of continued mystery. The gift of safety. I won't forget this choice you've made." "I won't see you again, will I?" I asked. "No," Walker said. "I'll disappear back into the deep forests. I'll carry the memory of this conversation, this moment of honest connection between our species. But we won't meet again. It's too dangerous now that you know we exist and where to look. Stay safe, Walker. Stay free. You too, Vincent. And thank you for understanding what really matters." Walker turned and walked into the forest, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large, disappearing into the shadows and undergrowth as if becoming part of the trees themselves. Within seconds, there was no trace that Walker had ever been there except for a few deep footprints in the soft earth near where we'd stood. I sat by that creek for another 2 hours, processing what had happened, what I'd chosen, what I'd lost and gained. Finally, as the sun began to descend toward the horizon, I packed up my equipment and hiked back to my Bronco. The drive back to Portland was long and quiet. I kept thinking about Walker's words, about the choice I'd made, about what could have been and what needed to be. When I got home, I put away all my equipment except for the destroyed cassette tape, which I kept in a drawer as a reminder. Over the following weeks and months, I tried to continue my work as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I'd met something impossible, had a conversation that shouldn't have happened, made a choice that would define the rest of my life. I never told anyone what happened, not friends, not family, not fellow photographers. I kept Walker's secret, kept my promise. The years passed. I continued my photography work, specializing more and more in wilderness conservation, using my images to argue for protection of old-growth forests and remote ecosystems. In some small way, I like to think I was keeping my promise to Walker, protecting the places where Walker's people might still survive. In 1985, I bought a small cabin in the Cascade foothills, an isolated place surrounded by forest. I've lived there for 40 years now, watching the seasons change, watching the forest slowly shrink as development creeps closer. I'm 72 now, older than I ever imagined I'd be back in 1980 when I was young and full of ambition and certainty. Last week, something remarkable happened. I was sitting on my porch in the early evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple, when I heard a sound from the forest behind my cabin, a low, resonant vocalization that I hadn't heard in 45 years, but recognized immediately. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding, and walked to the edge of my clearing. And there, standing in the shadows between the trees, was a figure I'd thought I'd never see again. Walker looked older, the hair more gray than brown now, the face more lined, the movement slightly stiffer, but the eyes were the same, intelligent and aware, watching me with recognition and something that might have been affection. "Hello, Vincent," Walker said, the voice deeper than I remembered, but unmistakably the same. "It's been a long time." I found myself crying, tears running down my weathered face, unable to speak for a moment. Then I managed to say, "I thought you were gone. I thought I'd never see you again." "I almost didn't come back," Walker said. "It's not safe even here anymore, but I'm old now and I wanted to see you one more time before." Walker paused. "Before my time ends. We don't live forever, Vincent. Even my kind has limits." We talked for hours that evening, catching up on 45 years. Walker had made it to British Columbia, had lived in remote areas of the coast mountains, had survived and even found others. "There are more of us than I thought," Walker told me. "Perhaps 150 in Canada and Alaska, living in the most remote areas. We've become very good at staying hidden." I told Walker about my life, about the cabin, about my continued photography work, about how I'd never forgotten our conversations or broken my promise to keep Walker's existence secret. "I knew you wouldn't," Walker said. "That's why I trusted you. That's why I'm here now." As the moon rose and the stars appeared, Walker stood to leave. "This is goodbye, Vincent. Truly goodbye this time. I won't be back. I'm too old for travel now. This journey from Canada took everything I had, but I wanted you to know that what we shared in 1980, those conversations, they mattered to me. They gave me hope that your species isn't completely lost." "They mattered to me too," I said. "You changed my life, Walker. You taught me what really matters." Walker nodded slowly. "Then my risk in approaching you all those years ago was worthwhile. Live well, Vincent Holloway. Whatever time you have left, spend it wisely. Protect the wild places. I will. I promise again." Walker reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder, just as Walker had done in 1980. The touch was warm and real, and full of unspoken meaning. Then Walker turned and walked back into the forest, disappearing into the darkness between the trees. I stood there for a long time after, looking up at the stars, listening to the night sounds of the forest. The same sounds I'd heard 45 years ago by that creek, when I'd made a choice that defined the rest of my life. Now, sitting here in my cabin writing this account, I face another choice. What do I do with this story? I'm 72 years old. I won't live forever. At some point, this secret will die with me unless I share it. But sharing it would violate the promise I made. So I've decided to write this account and seal it to be opened only after my death. Maybe decades from now, someone will read this and understand what I experienced, or maybe they'll dismiss it as the ramblings of an old photographer who spent too much time alone in the woods. Either way, I'll have kept my promise. To whoever eventually reads this, I'm Vincent Holloway, and I'm telling you the truth. Bigfoot is real. They're intelligent, articulate, and trying desperately to survive in a world that keeps shrinking around them. They speak English, at least some of them do. They understand human society better than we understand theirs. And they've chosen to remain hidden, not out of inability to communicate, but because they know what would happen if they revealed themselves. Respect that choice. If you go into the wilderness, go quietly and humbly, leave no trace, and if you're extraordinarily lucky, you might glimpse something extraordinary. But if you do, I'm asking you to do what I did. Keep it to yourself. Let them remain mysterious. Some things are more important than proof. Some beings deserve to live without human interference. I made the right choice in 1980 when I erased that tape. I'm making the right choice now by sealing this account. The wild places are disappearing. The mysteries are being solved and explained away. But please let this one remain. Let the Sasquatch stay in the realm of legend and shadow. They've earned that right through centuries of patience and adaptation. They're out there in the deep forests, in the remote mountains, in the places where humans rarely go. They're watching, listening, surviving, and they deserve to keep doing so without our interference. That's my story. I kept my promise, Walker. For 45 years and counting, I kept it, and I'll keep it until the day I die. Some things are meant to remain unknown. Some friendships transcend the need for proof, and some promises are worth keeping, no matter the cost.